Hey, welcome back to Range Minded. This is episode 159. This is Steve Zimmerman from the Eastern Front, and we got a couple of people that might sound familiar. Who's over there in Boise first?
Here, as always, Nick Hoffer, and finally we have another guest on. We're back up to 3.
Just 3 guests.
So who's with us today, Steve?
Hey, who do we got? Adam, tell us about it yourself again.
Yeah, so this is Adam Boyce back again. I think this is the fourth time?
Third or fourth time?
Yeah. So I'm the knife guy, gun guy.
The knife guy.
Excited to be back on.
Adam's almost been on here as much as me, it sounds like.
Almost. But getting that time for Adam is pretty difficult. He's kind of a busy cat.
Trying to stay busy. Yeah, trying to avoid all this crazy COVID stuff going on and stay busy. But yeah.
Yeah. Nick? Oh, go ahead, Nick. I had a question.
So speaking of COVID, yesterday I called my parents and I was going to run by their house, and both of my parents have COVID. So now I officially have been impacted by this virus.
Crazy. I think everybody's been impacted at some extent, right?
Well, this is the first person that I've been related to anywhere that has been sick. I've had people test positive, but I haven't seen anybody that's been sick. My mom said, "Don't come over. Your dad's sick."
Is it kicking his butt, or is it he's just?
I talked to him on the phone. He said the worst symptom was he had a headache. He couldn't taste his Copenhagen anymore, and he was tired. So I don't know if that was just him being the redneck that he is, or if it's just not that bad for him. He said he got it from my mom. I talked to my mom a few days ago. I didn't even know she was sick. So,
wow. Yeah, I'm ready for this to get over. It's kind of interesting. You hear a lot of people that have been impacted as far as their friends getting it. I don't know anybody personally that's died from it. Maybe that's a little insensitive, but I don't know anybody. So I'm ready for this to be over, but I know a lot of people are still struggling with it. So
this is what was weird to me. My dad got vaccinated a week ago.
Well, maybe it's a reaction to the vaccine, because it is the virus, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what was weird to me, because for his work, he got vaccinated, and now he's sick.
As long as it's not
no conspiracy at all. That's a legitimate thing. It really happened. I had no clue that could happen.
I think I shared last time, or a couple episodes ago, that a friend of mine, he was 71. He was fine, decided to get the shot, and then got sick and died.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was 100% attributed. I can't say that the shot killed him, right? That's not true, because a lot of people have gotten the shots, but it just didn't work out for him very well.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the White House will talk about us like they did Joe Rogan, because we just talked about the vaccine. So
that'd be great, because then we'll get a whole bunch more guests, or a whole bunch more guests anyways.
Exactly. Every podcast I listened to this week was talking about Joe Rogan talking about the vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's hear about what you guys got going on over there. I know you guys you did a weekly class or something. Last week we talked about the class that you did with Adam and tomahawk throwing and some other stuff like that. So let's hear what you guys got going
throwing of tomahawks, at least not yet.
Yeah, so it was more focused on how do you actually use a tomahawk. A lot of people will carry a tomahawk or have a battle axe or something cool, tactical, but they don't know how to use it. They just figure, hey, if I ever have to use this in real life, I'm just going to chop.
And I just thought those were made for cutting wood.
Yeah.
Well, they are. But man, Adam's pretty tricky. He's like, hey, try this. And I don't know. It's pretty amazing what, when you know how to use a tool, it can do a lot.
Yeah, I saw a video of him swooping your hands and whatnot with it, and all I could think of was, why doesn't he just stick it right between your forehead?
Cause you gotta have some cuts first before you kill him.
So let's go back to that. As far as why wouldn't you just go right for the head? Well, you could, and depending on the legality of it, using a tomahawk for self-defense is going to be a little extreme. It's probably not something you walk around with in your back pocket. And so the idea behind that, the video you maybe saw is when they come with an angle one attack or an attack to the right side of my body, the idea was to hook their arm, and then I'm passing it to the outside. So I'm getting on the outside where they can no longer attack me. So it puts me in an advantageous spot. So if at that point I decide, okay, the threat is done, I can finish there without even having to hit them with the tomahawk, or I can continue. And if the threat is justifying lethal force, then I can do something more effective if I need to. That's kind of why that's set up that way.
What are you doing over there?
Sitting. I'm not even moving.
Oh, it's a weird noise.
Hang on. Here, keep talking about this. Let me shut the door.
Sound like you were playing with change or something.
Feeding cats or something.
There's nothing on your desk? It was a weird noise. Anyway.
So, go on,
So
Steve.
back to tomahawking.
Yeah, but anyway, tomahawks are kind of a fun tool. They're one of my favorites because, again, the practicality of using it out in the public's probably not very high, but it's not unlikely that you have one when you're up backpacking or hiking or camping or whatever. But a lot of the cool features with it is you can hook, you can punch out with it, you can keep people at bay further away from you, you can slap with it. I mean, it doesn't have to be a chopping cutting tool. It can be an impact and a hooking tool as well. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when Steve had first brought that up, I was telling him that I had noticed they have a tomahawk throwing league now on ESPN.
Yeah.
And I had no clue about that. I don't carry around the tomahawk, but maybe one day you run into one of those guys or Adam here, and you're mouthing off and he swoops your hands with the tomahawk and stabs you in the face with his left hand. But
well, the other thing that's kind of interesting is you don't have to use the heavy sharp end either. Like you can grip and kind of flip it over and grip near the head of the axe and use the handle as a less lethal option if you need to, which is awesome. I think like it's amazing the things you can if you have to improvise a tool in defense. Like there's a lot of stuff around you that you can use.
I wish we could just convince people to carry guns.
You're right. I think it's a way better option.
Every time I take a knife class, I watch a knife class, tomahawks, it all seems like a lot more work than just making sure I carry my gun every single day.
Yeah, guns are awesome. I'm a big fan of gun. I carry everywhere I go that I can legally. One of the issues I see though, as far as guns, is most people don't know how to actually get their gun out. So if you're in entanglement or fighting, being able to actually get that gun out and use it is a big thing. A lot of people are neglecting to train.
Well, and I see the benefit to knives, and that's why I kind of started getting interested in it, was because my friend Ryan Atkins told me about how like he's traveled to 57 countries. Only 2 of those countries could he carry a gun in.
Yep.
So, and then I started thinking about like within the United States, like I can't carry a gun when I go to California.
Right.
I can't carry a gun if I go to some states back east.
Yep.
Hawaii, like some of those, I can't carry a gun.
Yep.
So I probably need to find another way. And obviously a knife is that thing. So.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I got into it. You know, if you go into a federal building, some will allow knives at all, and some will say, okay, you can have up to a 2.5-inch blade, and that's better than not having it, or than not having anything.
Well, then I also learned about like improvised blades.
Yep.
So things that aren't knives, aren't blades, but can be used in the same manner, and so that's what really got me interested in something other than a handgun. So obviously, I'm probably not going to walk around with an improvised tomahawk.
Right.
But I might have something sharp that if I needed to, I could stab my way out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
So, and that's really where that stuff interests me. So the difference between your style and say Ryan's style is his is more stabbing and yours is more cutting. And so he doesn't teach any of the like hand movements or any of the like blocking type stuff that you do.
Yeah.
So that's why I've been interested in watching both of you. And people will notice like on Instagram, like I'll share something from you and something from him. And even the knife styles that you guys share on your pages are totally different.
Yeah. So they're kind of an offensive versus a defensive standpoint is kind of what they are. The reason I do the stuff that I do, and again, the stuff Ryan teaches is really cool. But the reason I look at the stuff I do is it's more of a legally based system. So it's like instead of stabbing somebody and waiting for them to bleed out or cutting their carotid artery, which doesn't look good when you have to go defend this in a court of law. It's like, yeah, I slid him from ear to ear and I stabbed him 52 times and he still continued to fight. So I had to keep stabbing him. So that's kind of why we look at it. It's like, how do I disable somebody as quickly as possible? So we're looking at flexor tendons, muscles, nerves, anything that basically limits their ability to continue to attack you. So that's the focus. And that's why I kind of teach what I do is it's like, how do I stop somebody right now so they limit their ability to continue attacking me?
See, and I like that position because I teach that same thing when it comes to like when I'm explaining firearms defense to people here. Like if you shoot somebody 52 times, that was still 25 yards away and you reloaded and shot them 2 more times, that's probably going to be hard to defend as self-defense.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so like you said with the knife, like if you're stabbing them 20 times in the face, and then 2 times in the leg for good measure, like that might feel excessive.
Yeah.
So there's those 2 different sides. But then at the same time with that, if somebody's truly trying to kill you, it's nice to have that other information on how to stab somebody in the face 52 times.
Right. Yep.
So it kind of goes both ways, and it's cool to have both sides. So that's why I like getting the information from you, looking at the other information that's out there, and then seeing, hey, at what situation could I be in to where either of those work for me?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's benefit in learning and studying and seeing how different systems do things. That's one of the things that I do as an instructor is I try and take as many courses as I can from different people, even if I kind of look at it and go, okay, that's a little bit different than the way that I would do it, because I think you gain value, and there's things that will work for people and things that won't work for other people. So like, for example, this summer, I'm going to be taking Ed's Manifesto course here at Idaho Falls. It's going to be at Tops Knives. Really excited about that. I mean, a ton of respect for him because of what he's done. But his philosophy on knife is completely different than the way I look at things. But I'm excited to go see what he does and learn from that because I'll pick stuff up. So, I think there's benefit in it. And again, back to Ryan, I think Ryan, like you said, he's done some really cool executive protection, protecting guys from the singers, all those guys. Like he's done some real legit stuff, seen some really crazy things travel in the world. And he's a great guy and phenomenal instructor, and I think you can learn a lot from guys like that.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot. Like it definitely is. When I look at it this way, an offensive versus defensive situation that you talked about, because when I watch what you do, there's a lot of like moving the weapons that the other person has away from you. And when I've taken classes with Ryan, it's all about striking first and striking hard.
Right.
Yeah.
When you identify the threat. So that and like you said, the things that he's done, the way that he's trained, I know he trains a lot with Ed, and the stuff that they do in other countries is different than here. And even in the class, he's talking about like, these are things to watch out for when you're traveling. This is what happens. Like, this is why you do this. And a lot of the tactics that they use are things learned from the criminals. So they're teaching you how to identify that. And I think it's great to know how to keep yourself out of trouble when you're still at home, and know how to maybe someone wants to steal your wallet walking down the green belt. You don't necessarily got to stab them in the face and then 14 times in the throat. You might be able to just take the knife away.
Yeah. And I think that's important too. Like, and hopefully our listeners are really paying attention to this conversation. Just because, one guy's theory on knives is less desirable than the other, you're going to glean information from either of them. And it's important to listen. Like Adam says, he takes other classes from other instructors, whether it be firearms or whatever, because he's still a student, right? We should all be students no matter what. We should never think that we know everything, because we're going to learn something from somebody.
And I'm paying attention to these guys because knives scare the hell out of me. I've said this multiple times. A person with a knife scares the hell out of me. That's why I train with a gun.
Yeah.
If someone's coming at me with a knife, and I've seen Adam train, and I've seen Ed, and I've seen Ryan, nobody's getting close enough to reach me with a knife if I feel like I'm getting stabbed at this point in my life.
So I have a funny story about that. So on Instagram, probably a year or two ago, I posted a video, and it was a video with a cert pistol. So one of the students had a cert pistol, and then I had an Acu strike trainer, so it beeps when you cut. And the whole idea of the video was to show reaction versus action. So like you're saying, don't let people get close enough to to cut you, stab you. But the video was, okay, so he was open carry with a SIRT training pistol, and I had an electronic training knife, and I said, okay, before I stab you, I need you to draw your gun and shoot me. We started off close range, and as you know, reaction versus reaction, you're always going to be a little bit slower reacting to somebody's action.
Absolutely.
So in that video, again, it's not knife versus gun, it's just to show that principle. But I have my knife, and I think I stabbed him 14 or 15 times before he could get his gun out. And you can hear the beep, 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 beep. In fact, I posted that again the other day on Instagram. But the funny thing about that is I had a guy comment and say, well, dude, if you get within 21 feet of me with a knife, I'll just shoot you.
And the thing with a knife is, how do you know that they're a threat if they're not already acting out as a threat when they're far away? And that's to me what I tell people about, like, people with knives. I'm like, if someone shows a knife, in my opinion, they're just as deadly as someone who points a gun at me.
Yeah.
Because I want to ask this to you, because I've said this a few times when I'm talking to people, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but it's kind of my opinion, is that somebody who maybe draws a knife on somebody else, say a bad guy, or you get into a conflict and someone draws a knife, in my opinion, that person is more dangerous than a person with a gun, because I feel like in all of the incidents I've seen, people who draw a knife may use that thinking it's not as deadly of a weapon as a gun. We don't have, say, mandatory jail time for brandishing a knife like we do with gun crimes, right? So if a bad guy holds you up with a knife, they may think that they're not going to hurt you, and then they stab you and you might get hurt, but you're not going to die. Whereas with a gun, it's kind of ingrained in us. You shoot somebody, you're going to kill them. And so when somebody holds someone up with a knife, I always think you're probably more likely to get cut than if somebody that doesn't know much about guns points a gun at you. They might not shoot you. They might chicken out and run off if you don't get what you want. But with a knife, they might just stab you because they're like, whatever, it's a knife, I can cut you.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing with knives is most people, I mean, your whole life you've grown up cutting with steaks, you've grown using a knife for stuff. So everybody knows how to use one. Everybody's been cut. Everybody knows what it feels like. But the hard thing with the knife, too, when you think about it, so because it is omnidirectional, you can move it any direction. You don't have to reload. And the hardest part with the knife is that people have free will. So an attack is not always going to look the exact same with a knife, whereas with a gun, it's going to come and it has to point at you. The muzzle has to be pointed in your direction for it to be effective. So if somebody's going to use it with their strong hand, that's what people can do simply. But if they have to transfer over to support hand, they might not be as efficient with it. So if you get in a grappling situation or an encounter where you're fighting over a knife or a gun, from my experience and from those that I've talked to that have done it real world, fighting with a knife close quarters is a lot more challenging because of the omnidirectional and the free will that the individual has, that they can pull short or cut or stab or switch hands / cut. So that's
I've never seen anybody get in a knife fight that didn't get cut at least once.
Yeah.
So there's
So another thing with what you said is, so I've handled tons of guns. I've handled knives. I've never shot myself, but I've had horrible knife accidents.
Yeah.
I mean, I cut my hand so bad, like my hand's in pain right now, and it's 5 years later from having the surgery from a knife. But I've never accidentally shot myself. So I think we're more self-aware when it comes to like a firearm than it is a knife. Like you said, it's more commonplace for everybody to not be scared of a knife and have an accident or be attacked maybe by one.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's why I like carrying a knife, though, is because it is almost second nature. I mean, sure, I've shot a gun a lot, and I can hit usually what I'm aiming at fairly consistently or whatever. But a knife, it's just a versatile tool. I can either use it to open a letter or cut a slice of cake or stab somebody in the neck. Like, it's still something that's usable.
Yeah,
not
100%.
Stab the neck.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fun. And I really what it boils down to is I think it's just fun to train on other systems, not to get stuck on one thing, because guns can fail. I can break an arm and maybe not be able to use a knife, but it's either way, it's nice to have all these extra tools in the toolbox to rely on just in case.
And
and I also go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, and I kind of like to look at it like this way. So for a long time, the tool belt or the toolbox is kind of one of those things I've looked at as like, I need to learn as much information as I can. But when you start looking at systems and how they can coordinate together, all right, how could I use a pen or a flashlight like I would use a reverse grip knife? Start looking at things that way and just have some very basic concepts, not so much techniques. So you're looking at more, instead of having a big old toolbox, I got to lug around all this information. It's like, hey, I have some concepts, and it's more like a carpenter. They've got a nice a tool belt on. So I've got this tool that I can do this with, and this tool I can do that, but I don't have to take every tool in the warehouse with me to be able to defend myself. So that's kind of the fun thing once you start exploring. Is we have a saying in Martial Blade Concepts is the more you know, the less you know. So gaining some of this information and start seeing where things correlate is you are the weapon. A lot of people talk about that, is having the right mindset to use anything that's in your immediate area for self-defense if you had to. So that's kind of how I look at self-defense and why I study so many different things and why I go and train with others. You know, back on that note, as far as training with other instructors, last summer I took a red dot pistol course from Modern Day Samurai. Dude, if you ever get a chance to take a class from him, red dot especially, I highly encourage it. He changed the way I looked at gun grip and everything completely. I've been shooting for a long time now. I spent about 7 years as a sniper and assaulter on the special response team. Got some competitive matches, SWAT competitions. I love to shoot. And I went to his class, and he showed us a different way of looking at holding the grip on the gun, to manage the recoil a little bit better, how to pick up that red dot a little faster. And I thought I kind of knew what I did, but after that class, it's like, I'm going to do it this way. And it changed completely the way I look at handling guns. And I thought I knew as much as I would need to know. So always be learning, always be looking.
So the thing I really love about stuff like that, and even somebody who's got as much experience as you do, and training with other people and picking up new concepts, is it keeps the self-defense training fresh. So it makes it so it's not monotonous, it's not boring, it's not the same. You're not training with the same instructor every single time. You're not looking at the same even though you need to practice those concepts if you're going to implement them, and repetition and whatnot. But getting fresh and doing something different, like next weekend or the weekend after next, I'm going to go and take a jiu-jitsu class. Well, I've never done any hand-to-hand stuff, but this year my goals were to learn about knife fighting, to learn about blades, and then hand-to-hand, some sort of like martial arts.
Yep.
And just kind of freshen up, because I do a lot of gun training, but never anything without my gun. Well, I find times where I don't carry a gun, so I want to know what I can do without it. That's why I was so interested when I went to Ryan's class, because I wanted to know what I can do when I travel, when I don't carry any weapons, if I don't have a knife or anything. And then I watch you, and I'm like, well, what can I do if somebody attacks me with a knife and I don't have something on me, or I only have my pocket knife? Like, what is that? And then what if I get into an altercation and the other guy doesn't even have a weapon? Do I need to draw a weapon? How do I defend myself just with my hands and my feet?
Yep.
I mean, how do I not hurt somebody but still stop them from hurting me, maybe?
Yeah.
And that keeps it fresh. It's not just practicing how to draw and shoot.
Yep.
Because I've talked about this with Steve before. Like, the mindset of self-defense is something that a lot of people that pick up a gun for the first time, take an enhanced concealed carry class, and then strap on a gun and go about their day, don't recognize.
Yep.
Some of us have never hurt anybody in a deadly fashion. We've never killed anybody. What happens when you come to that point of, do I take this person's life to save mine or my family's?
Yep.
It's going to cause, like you said, with that situation with the knife and the SIRT gun, that hesitation to act.
Yep.
Which could get you killed if you don't know what you're doing.
Agreed. Yes. Well, that's awesome that you're continuing to train, and that's the right mindset, is looking what else you can do. I think for those of the audience that haven't tried jiu-jitsu, haven't tried Muay Thai or boxing or anything where it's a hands-on physical experience, you really need to go do that. Because I think for the most part, a lot of us, especially that carry guns, are kind of legends in our own mind. We kind of think, oh, dude,
That's right.
I got this gun. I'm good to go. If again, like that story I was starting to tell you about the guy that had the negative comment about my post with that situation with the cert and the gun. So this is actually what happened. So he posted on there, well, dude, if you get it within 21 feet of me, I'll just shoot you. And I was going to write back and say, well, no, that's not real, because you're not authorized at that point. If he doesn't have the ability, the opportunity, imminent jeopardy, and preclusion, if you can't justify that and say, this is why I shot him, you're going to jail. So the funny thing about that story is this individual that posted that, I actually saw him in Home Depot not long after that. He didn't see me. I snuck up behind him, patted him on the shoulder, and said, hey, how's it going? And you should have seen the look of fear in his eyes, because I think he correlated as like, oh, crap, he's closer than 21 feet, and I didn't shoot him.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that for me personally, my ambition and want to learn these other things and talk to people like you, and even the stuff that I've learned from Steve, because I've never taken a class with Steve,
Yep.
but the things that I've learned from doing the show with him and being around, like, it allows me to share more knowledge with the people I interact with every day who are new to firearms or self-defense.
Yeah.
And they look to us as being experts in our own right. And I don't want to share information or tell them something and not have experienced a little bit of it myself. Yeah. So when I talk about like concealed carry, for me it was always about carrying a gun. Yeah. Because that's what I knew.
Yep.
And then I started to branch out into doing stuff in the knife world, and I was like, man, I should learn more about this. And as I started to show that I was getting involved with knives and different defense blades, people started asking me about it. I'm like, well, I had to defer you off to this person because I don't know about that. I've never done it.
Yeah.
And then I start interacting with people who are in martial arts, and I'm like, people start asking about that, and I'm like, I don't know anything about it. I talked to this person and shared their content. So by association, we become all of a sudden this expert in something we know nothing about.
Yep.
And so when I'm sharing with the people who come into my shop, hey, you're carrying a gun, you should consider training with this person. And once you do that, you should also train with this. Don't get caught up in just training one way. Like, go learn how to use a knife. Go learn how to use your hands. Go learn how to roll around on the ground in case something happens. Go learn how to be on the ground and still get your gun. Go learn how to shoot at the range, but then go to an outdoor range where you can move around and shoot from the move because for the longest time, I only ever shot at an indoor range.
Yep.
And the indoor range that was here before independence, we didn't draw, we didn't move around. I didn't shoot IDPA, so I didn't get to do any of the like mag changes, any of that. It was all off the table.
Yeah.
Well, if you start going out, and then that's when I started shooting competition, because a lot of my customers were competition shooters. And I got out there and I was like, oh, this has a huge carryover into my everyday, way more than sitting here shooting paper.
Yep.
And I went through it that way. And then I learned about competition, and people were asking, I was like, okay, well, now I'm taking a class on how to shoot 3-gun.
Yep.
I was never good at it, but I took classes from Raul on 3-gun, learned a little bit about it. Yeah, and then I send people out to go train with him or go shoot a match and see what it's like to get your blood pressure up and be on the move and actually shoot your gun. Changes the dynamic completely.
Yep. That's all. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, put yourself under pressure, even if it's just a timer, and see where your shots go.
Yeah.
And then same could be said with hand-to-hand or blade work. Like, go put yourself in front of Adam and see how you react when somebody who knows how to use a knife comes at you. What do? For me, I go, oh shit, I'm dead.
You're gonna find out when you start rolling around on the mat and you feel the aggressor's strength like working against you, and then him knowing how to use your own strength against you. Like, it's an eye opener when you start rolling around.
Well, and it opened my mind up, because I always thought about, like, when I was younger, I'm still a small guy, right? And so I've gotten into a few fights in my life. Well, I was a wrestler all growing up from the age of like 12 until I was 18. Mm-hmm. And anytime anyone wanted to fight with me, I immediately took it to the ground, which threw them completely off their game, because if they weren't a wrestler, they wanted to stand up and go toe to toe. Well, I knew that was not my advantage. So I took it to the ground. And this was before MMA and UFC was a big deal, and everybody thought they were a UFC fighter.
Yeah.
But
they had that American Fighter T-shirt on, so
yeah, that threw them off because you didn't want to box.
Yeah.
So if you can change it up on somebody, maybe they know that for some reason that you're carrying a gun, but you don't go to your gun. You just diffuse the situation without it. Like that's those tools that you talk about in your tool belt that just adds all those different layers that keeps you not only on your toes, but anyone who's going to attack you, they don't know what's coming.
Yeah. Well, and there's another thing Adam brought up one time. One of the things we were doing is, and it's probably the most important martial art, is just communication, like verbal communication. There's the verbal jujitsu video
verbal judo. Yep.
Or verbal judo. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
The guy talks about how to diffuse a situation just in conversation without even having to get hands on or on the ground. It's communicating is a huge part. And I think that's one thing that I think we in the defense world, we kind of fail at because we figure, well, I have a knife or I have a gun. So if the guy starts something, I'm good. Instead of just learning how to avoid it altogether.
Well, even off of that note, what's interesting is a lot of people think, okay, I'm big and strong, and if I get an altercation, I'll just punch him and knock him out. There's been a lot of cases where people were in the right as far as, hey, you're in a self-defense situation, you throw a punch, you knock the guy out, he hits his head on the bench or a chair in there, and then they die, and now you are potentially facing manslaughter charges or worse because it went too far.
So that's a great point, and to that point, I can't remember the guy's name. He has a really unique name too, but he's a machinist. And so in the machining world, he teaches he has an online academy for machining, right? And he used to be a professional boxer. I think he was from Hawaii.
Yep.
And he was a professional boxer. He was in California where he lived, and he got into a bar fight, punched a guy, literally knocked the guy out. The guy fell, hit his head, just like you said, and died. And he went to prison for it.
Yep.
Because exactly. I mean, it's the Con Air type defense, right? Like the guy gets out of the military, gets into a fight defending his wife, kills the dude. They decide that because of his training, he was a deadly weapon, and he gets murdered. Yeah. Like it could happen. And the verbal de-escalation, that's something I've practiced my whole life because, like I said, I've never been a big guy. And before I carried a gun, the last thing I even thought about was defending myself. I was like, if I can't get out of this without talking my way out, I'm in deep shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even now, like I've found myself stepping in between like people that wanted to fight people I was with that are way bigger than me.
Yep.
And saying, look, dude, you don't want, I just did this a few weeks ago.
Yeah. You shared that story.
Yeah. The guy was trying to pick a fight with Ryan and Johnny before we did that class. And I was like, whoa, dude, you do not want any part of this.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to fight you. These guys aren't going to fight you, but I'm telling you, like, you don't know who these people are. Just walk away. Like I didn't see it getting to a bad point, but the last thing I wanted to see was someone get beat up because they were being stupid, running their mouth and hit somebody.
Yeah.
And I told that kid, I was like, dude, in today's world, especially, like, just don't go out of your way to pick fights with people because you don't like the way that they were looking at you.
Yep.
Like, you have no idea who that person is. It's that theory of don't just randomly flip people off because you don't know who that person is and what they're going through.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, shit, you could, if you didn't know Chuck Liddell and you walked into a bar and you thought you were a tough guy and you're like, hey, screw you, buddy.
He's just an old fat guy. What's he going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're in a toe-to-toe fight with Chuck Liddell. I don't know how that's going to go, but it's probably going to end badly for you.
Yep.
And there was probably no reason for you besides wanting to be tough in front of your girlfriend that you picked that fight.
Well, and I don't understand why he would want to pick a fight with Ryan because Ryan's not small. He's a big dude.
Well, didn't he play offensive line for like Louisiana State or something like that? Didn't he? I mean, he's a big dude.
He's like 6'4". He used to be 320. Now he's like 250, 260. But I mean, he wasn't even standing up. Like I can't remember what happened. Like the guy's friend was like staring down Johnny, who was Ryan's buddy, who was here, and
Yep.
Johnny was talking to us, and me and Ryan were like, "Hey man, just let it go. Like we come here all the time. It's not like let them be dumb." And he said the guy said something, and like Ryan heard him, and Ryan like stood up because we were all sitting down. And as soon I've been out with Ryan a bunch, and I've never ever seen him be aggressive towards anybody.
No, he's the chillest guy you'll ever meet, but most capable guy you'll meet. He's just a cool dude.
I was just sitting there next to his wife Kelly, and we're talking, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like what just happened?" And I stood up and I turned around, and I, without even thinking, stepped between a 6'4", 260-pound guy and another guy that was taller than me. He's probably 180, 6 foot, and I'm 5'9", 150, like not big at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa! And I pushed this guy back, and I don't even remember what was happening with Ryan in those days. There was like everyone at our table was way more capable than me, and that's what scared me. I was like, I don't want to be a part of anyone getting hurt, so you guys need to just go. And I go to that place enough that the bouncer was like, "Nick, what's going on?" I'm like, "These people need to leave." And the kid looks, he goes, "I'm just having a conversation with he's talking about me," and he goes, "If Nick says you got to go, you need to get out."
Nice.
It's like, and obviously I've made a reputation to where I'm not going to put up with any like bullshit like that. And the bouncer was just like, "You need to leave."
Yep.
And the kid was mad, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm saving your life. Like, if you have any," he's like, "I don't have anything to lose." I said, you have your life to lose by picking fights with people you don't know. Doesn't matter if it's them or the people across the parking lot. Like, step back and rethink this whole situation, because it could one day be very bad for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think.
And then everybody I was with left, and I stayed because I was waiting for someone else. And that guy's friends came over and talked to me, and I was like, "Man, you never know who you're messing with."
Nope.
And I said, not to say that like the guys I were with are any more deadly or badass than your buddy.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to see people get hurt.
Right.
And it's inherent that if you run around picking fights with people, eventually you're going to pick a fight with the wrong guy.
Yeah, you're going to lose.
Yep, absolutely. And you don't know who that guy is. And the interesting thing about it is the more that you train with different people and different styles, whatever, the more you realize that I'm going to avoid fights at all costs because of that. Yeah, I'm going to develop these skills and have the skills that I can so that I can use them if I need to. But in my opinion, and the way I look at things now, is the best fight is the fight avoided. So if it comes down to it, I'm going to try and use verbal de-escalation to try and make that fight not occur, because I don't want to get into it. You don't know if he has a buddy that's sitting there behind you and you get in a fight and you're doing great, and then he hits you in the back of the head with a beer bottle or whatever it is.
And I think that's something that I've learned. The more guys that I've hung out around, and the more training I've done, I've just like you said, I've learned the idea that the more you train, the more you don't want to get into an altercation.
Yep.
I mean, as soon as that altercation happened, everybody that I was with they all left.
Yep.
They're like, "Yeah, we don't want any part of this. Like, we're out of here."
Yep.
Because if anyone's going to get in trouble, if we get into something, it's going to be us, because we're the most capable.
Right.
So we're going to leave.
Yep.
And same with me. Like, the more I meet people like you, Ryan, Johnny Primo, any of these guys, I recognize, like, I don't want to get into an altercation because I don't know who this person is.
Right.
Like, if I ran into you, Adam, we've never met in person before.
Yep.
And if before I had seen pictures of you or videos of you train, I wouldn't know who you were.
Yeah.
And at this point, if I got into an altercation with you, I know that I'm at a disadvantage and I would be screwed. So the more I do hand-to-hand stuff, knife stuff, gun stuff, any of that, it's like, man, that guy didn't strike me as cold-blooded killer, but I guess he might be. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut when I see him not open the door for that old lady.
It's reality. Like, some of the people I've met from training with Adam, there's a gentleman that lives in Lava Hot Springs that, like, first time I was like, "Oh, this guy, what the heck is this guy?"
Yep.
And then he come and talked to me, showed me some things. I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
he knows a lot more than I do when it comes to a knife."
Yep.
And even the gym where we do jujitsu, like those two dudes, they're really unassuming. I mean, you can tell that they've been in, done martial arts because they're kind of broken up. Their hands are broken. You see their noses have been broken, but they just look like a couple of Idaho farm boys that you wouldn't.
Have you seen that meme floating around where it shows the guys with cauliflower ear and it's like that? This is what you look for before you get into a bar fight.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, the interesting thing when you mentioned before, you look at somebody like me and I'm kind of unassuming. That's actually, I've heard that a lot from a lot of people, and I would kind
it's
of
the baby face.
It's probably the baby face, but I view that as one of the best compliments I've ever had. I did a seminar in Arizona a couple years ago, and the guys from Skill Set magazine came, and it was kind of funny because after the seminar, they had a great time and they were talking about it, and they were talking about me in particular, and they said, Adam is one of the most nice, unassuming, capable guys you ever meet. And that's kind of where you want to be. You don't want to be the guy that looks like, hey, I can kick everybody's butt here. You want to be the guy that can kind of set off in the corner and disappear if you need to, and not be the guy that draws attention to yourself. So,
and that's the same thing that we talk about when it comes to concealed carry with a firearm is like everybody freaks out about printing their firearm, right? Like, oh, it's printing. You can see it under my shirt. But I go, dude, you're wearing a grunt style T-shirt
and 511 and boots
that says this is my killing shirt, and you're worried that they can see the butt of your gun
right
under your T. I'm like, there's so many more keys that told me you had a gun before I even got close enough to recognize that the magazine on your pistol was poking through your shirt. Yeah, it used to be the 511 tactical pants with the black law enforcement boots and a 511 shirt. Now it's grunt style 9-line. Like you're wearing all of these brands that just scream, "I have a gun."
Yep. Yeah. That's kind of interesting that you say that as far as the appearances. I took a firearms course from Instructor Zero a few years ago, and one of the things he talked about was appearances. And as far as making entry, one of the things they would do on their shield for their assault teams is they would actually draw, I can't remember if it was Daffy Duck or Donald Duck. Is it Donald Duck? So on the front of their,
there's two.
Yeah. So it's the Disney one. So the Donald
Duck is the white duck.
That's the one. Yep. So they drew a picture of him on the front of their shield, their assault team. And the idea behind it was when they made entrance, people saw that and they're like, what? Just give them that half second where they're looking at something going like, this doesn't make sense. Why is there a character on the front of this shield? And
yeah,
kind of interesting, kind of modern urban camouflage, I guess. But
yeah, the whole idea on like concealed carry in my mind is to be unassuming, so that people, your first, how do I put this? So I guess a good way for me to explain it, being that I make holsters, is that when people ask me for like secondary and third like levels of retention, and I tell them, look, this is an inside the waistband holster. Your primary retention is the holster. Your secondary and third retention is the concealment. No one should be able to sneak up on you and take it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know you have it. So same thing with being a tough guy. If you're out there like promoting that you're a tough guy and gonna beat people up, like you're the first guy that is gonna get picked out. If you're open carrying a gun and there's a bank robbery, you're the first guy that they're gonna take down.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? If you're the bad.
So same thing in a bar fight or an altercation. If you're the tough guy and you're running your mouth and you get an altercation with this guy, his buddies are gonna take you. Or if you're standing behind the guys and you're being a tough guy, you're the next person to get involved in that fight, even if you didn't want to. So I think that being unassuming is the best defense and the best concealment of whatever you're trying to do.
Yep. Last year I took a course from Rory Miller. It's actually down there in Boise, and it was on situational awareness. So he's written several books on self-defense and whatnot. If you get the chance, check him out. Rory Miller, really good stuff. But the whole course was on how to be aware of what's going on around your surroundings. And he had different things that he put us through. Like he took us down to a park in Boise, and he had us walk around, and we had to do kind of an assumption game where we'd walk down and say, okay, I would assume that person, based on what they're wearing, this is what they do for a living, this is what they do. And then we'd go engage in a conversation and try and find out if our assumption was correct. Another part of that, he would have us go walk down the green belt there, and we had to look for weapons. Like what is a weapon of opportunity? So starting to play games and stuff like that of looking at people, being aware of what they're doing, what tools are around you as you go throughout your daily life. You don't even have to be paranoid, but just thinking about stuff like that really opens up your mind and makes you more aware of what's actually happening. One thing I do in all my seminars is I tell everybody, we're going to teach you these concepts and these principles of how to use a knife, how to defend against a knife empty-handed, but it will do you no good. It doesn't matter how good you are at this if you're not aware of what's going on around you. So that's the first thing. So I actually issue a challenge, and the challenge is, and this is for only people that have attended my course. So if you want to play, you got to come to one of my classes. But the challenge actually is, if you come to my class, after the class ends, when we're out in public, if you can sneak up behind me and touch me on the left shoulder before I see you, before I identify you, then I will give you either a challenge coin, a patch, or a gift card to like Chick-fil-A or whatever I have in my wallet. And so the fun thing about that game is now everywhere I go, because I know that I have thousands of people at this point that I've taught trying to touch me on the shoulder, that it makes me more aware of what's going around. And it's not that I'm paranoid, but it's like, okay, now it's a fun game and I'm seeing things that happen before I would otherwise. And I've told this story a couple times as far as this game. I've at this point touched thousands of people, this stuff, and I've been caught twice. So both times actually happened. I work for a government agency. I'm a firearms instructor for my day job. And the one time I got done working out, and I'm coming out of the shower. I'm completely naked. And one of the guys that had been in my classes was an officer there, and he waited around the corner till I came around. I'm in zone white, butt naked, coming out of the shower. He taps me on the shoulder, and I had to give him a gift card. So
that's a great story.
Yeah. Well, I kind of learned my lesson there. It's like, man, even here in this place that is locked down where you have to have a clearance and access to get into it, I still, things can happen. So even off of that little story, the second time I got caught was another officer, and we had to go from our main facility to our range. So we had these vans that we take the students in from the main facility to the range. And one of the officers that had been in one of my classes hid in the back, and I was driving. Didn't see that this officer was in this van. I thought they were in another one. And as I started driving, snuck up, touched me on the shoulder. And it's like, dang it. So,
and I know that officer.
Yeah.
And that individual's sneaky anyways.
Very sneaky. Yeah.
So something with that is it's if we're not practicing and using those things daily when we don't need them. So that situational awareness, that thinking of tools of opportunity.
Yeah.
I know I had spoke with Ryan one time about like medical stuff, like what you could use for like intuitive like medical stuff if you didn't have it. Like if you don't practice that stuff and think about it in your mind on a daily basis or a weekly basis, when you actually need it, you're not going to know what to do. And I always go back to, so I don't have law enforcement or military training, but I did train to become a firefighter, and I was a firefighter for about 5 years. And I think we always revert back to what we've practiced and what we've trained.
Yep.
So when I would train and I would feel stuck, like I would train to the point where I thought that it was real.
Yep.
And in my mind, if I couldn't get out of this, I was going to die. And when I'm practicing, I would think of, well, what did I practice when I was sitting on the couch and I was just going through this in my mind? What did I do?
Yeah.
And then, so now when it comes to like situational awareness or weapons of opportunity, when I'm walking around and I'm like, oh, hey, look, that's something that we went through in this class, and I should be paying attention to that. Or how would I get, if I'm just sitting somewhere waiting for someone, like, what would I do if something happened here? And we kind of talk about it in the gun world with like, we go to a restaurant, we face the door. We don't put our back to the door type thing. We're looking at exits. Well, I've done that for years.
Yeah.
Like thought about the exits, right?
Yep.
Well, I took a class recently, or sat in on a class, and they talked about what exits can you see?
Yep.
And I go, well, in this building, I can see the front exit and I can see the fire exit. I'm facing the front exit because that's most likely where I think a threat's going to come from.
Yep.
And that person says to me, well, if I was a bad guy, if I did come in through that exit, I'd probably be paying attention to the fire exit too. Yeah. The best place for you to be thinking about, Nick, is the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because there's always a door and an exit to the kitchen.
Yep.
He goes, if something goes down in here, everybody in this dining room is going for those 2 exits.
Right.
And if you go out those 2 exits, the people outside, be it the police or the bad guys, they're going to stop you at those exits.
Yeah.
You leave through the kitchen or through the back door out the employee entrances, you can probably leave the entire situation without being detected.
Yep.
And I was like, I've been doing this for 15 years. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, if something went down, I'd like to think that if I was pinned down, that would go through my head. Like, I can't get to these exits. There's got to be another way. But now I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get into the kitchen? Like, I go to the Sunrise here all the time. I'm like, I sit all around the restaurant. I'm like, if I was going to get in the kitchen, I'd have to go around the counter and through the back.
Yep. Well, that's the other side off of that too, as far as where you sit. A lot of people say I'm going to sit with my back facing. I'm going to be facing the door, and I'm going to sit in the corner. The corner is not necessarily always the best place to sit because of that. As far as the guy coming in, that's where he might be looking. Is all right. Here's a threat. Here's the guy's looking at it. So maybe position yourself off the side a little bit where you don't look like you're the dude that's packing a gun, and then maybe position yourself where you can also use mirrors and reflections and other stuff, not only just what you visually see, but make yourself unassuming.
Kind of a funny story about the restaurant thing is, so I don't know if Adam's met Terry, but I know Steve has. He's been on the show a few times. And so me and Terry, we work in the same building. We used to be business partners.
Yep.
And so we go to breakfast and lunch a lot together. And so anytime we go to sit somewhere, it's like we're both positioning ourselves to have the door side.
Yep.
or not have the door side. And I'm like, it's okay. I trust you. I know you. I know that you're paying attention. But I always go, I'll let you have your back to the wall because I'm going to watch the other side for you.
There you go.
And so it's like, that's like our ongoing, every time we go anywhere to lunch, and people that go with us will be like, feel like it's a little bit, but we always do it. It's always like, well, as long as you have your gun on you, I'm fine with you facing the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you got to surround yourself with people that are like-minded.
Yeah. Just good people, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's also why, like, when I start hanging out with new people, I always try to get them involved in like what we do, because I want them to be just as capable as me. I know when I meet some new people, like they'll be like, oh, well, we're with Nick. Nick's carrying a gun. We're good. And I'm like, no, man, you gotta have your own way to protect yourself.
You're on your own. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are you going to do if I'm not around?
Yeah. Self-preservation, man.
So, yeah, no, that's great. So what else you got going on over on that side of the state, Steve?
Well, let's see. What do we got? You got some seminars coming up, don't you?
Yeah. So this Saturday, we've got a knife seminar in Rexburg. That one is sold out. I'm going to be a little bit hesitant as far as I was going to start pushing out some more big seminars, start traveling a little bit. My agency's kind of pushing a little bit the COVID thing again. So I'm going to be I'm not going to be doing seminars as much as I wanted for a little bit, but hoping to get back to it soon.
Well, you could just keep it small. We could go to Florida and get like 75,000 people.
Yeah. The UFC fights last weekend were awesome. They had 15,000 in attendee. It was just cool to see that again. I attended the last UFC fight in Vegas in January 2020, right before all this happened. And just the atmosphere and having people there was awesome. And then to watch it on TV there for a while afterwards, where it was like, you had the announcer Joe Rogan and those guys talking, and then like 50 people in the crowd or whatever it was.
Well, even some of those fights, I mean, there was no one in the crowd. They fought in the training facility with no one in there, and it was so weird to watch because you lose that dynamic of the event.
Yeah.
And even I remember watching interviews with the fighters, and it was like, yeah, it's just not the same.
Right.
Like we're here to do a job. We're not really paying attention to the crowd, but at the same time, like it's hard to get hyped up when there's not anyone around it. I definitely miss events. Like, I am a huge networking, like, social person.
Yep.
And I definitely miss events.
Well, and I like to people watch. Like, that's why I enjoy SHOT Show, or, some people have a real problem being around crowds, but I enjoy being around crowds because I make a game about like who's carrying, right? We just talked about Waldeck.
Yeah.
I make a game out of it, but I also like watching people interact. I like watching people's mannerisms. Like, maybe that's weird, but I enjoy just observing.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love large crowds. It's weird because I grew up being such an introvert, and now like I can't stand not interacting with people.
Yeah.
So like when I'm alone here at the shop, like that's why you guys see me like on Instagram and stuff, like going out to lunch and stuff all the time, because I can't handle being by myself
Yeah.
and not interacting with people. Like if no one's coming in the shop, like I'm shutting down for an hour and I'm running over to the sushi place or to the Sunrise so that I can talk to people. And it's funny because I have no problem turning over and talking to people at the table next to me if I'm sitting there by myself.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, that's how I built my business for one. But and I have probably converted thousands of people from that to being aware of self-defense and concealed carry just because of that.
That's
Because
awesome.
you start talking about what you do, and oh well, what do you think about these gun laws, or what do you think about the shooting? And you start talking about what happened, and they're like, I never looked at it that way.
Yep.
So
Well, and what a cool skill, because again, we talked earlier about you never know who you're talking to. And I think a lot of people have a lot of pent up energy right now.
Oh, yeah.
And people are losing the ability to communicate because we have these masks on our face. So we're losing how to recognize facial expressions. So you going out of your way to at lunch talk to somebody else and still keeping that ability to read what people are trying to say or portray is awesome. It's a good skill.
I think these days, something that really throws people off, because it's starting to be a lost art. I know it's not going to be with you guys, but like holding the door open for people, especially right now or
Yeah.
the last year,
Yep.
like people get so thrown off by like you stop out of your way to hold the door for people.
Yeah.
And I've probably, I hate to say this because it's not about the money, but I've gained customers just by holding the door for someone, and then as we go into wherever we're at, talking to them while we're waiting in line or whatnot.
Yep.
Like
Well-
people have not recognized, like if something was to happen in that building, now I've made an ally before I even got in the building. And I've never looked at it that way, but when you think about it, like by going out of my way to just interact with people, I've either made an ally or I've recognized what's going on before I even get in the building.
Yeah.
In that way, social media has been a great. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why social media is a disservice to civilization, but because we're unable to communicate, we watch or read memes or we watch stupid short videos that most of them are lies anyways. We're unable to really communicate, and then being muzzled with a mask, can't. Man, we're being accosted already. But we're unable to really communicate because humans are the social species anyway. We're designed to communicate not just verbally but with physical cues too. And so for some reason we've as a society chosen to be way more introverted, way more conservative in our speech patterns and our mannerisms, and it's hard because we're supposed to be communicating visually as well as vocally, and I think it's good to get out there and show people that you can do both. You can be courteous, you can communicate with your hands as well as your mouth, and I think it's important.
And see, I would say that social media is what actually brought those traits out in me. So I always was courteous, but like being able to meet people like you and Adam, like I never met you before you helped open the range here.
Right.
And I saw you the first few times and knew who you were because you were doing videos for the range. And same thing with like when I met Sean Whalen. I met him over Facebook and then went and met him at an event. And it's funny because he said this. He goes, we were at an event together. Didn't know that either of us was going to be there. And we saw each other and we just instantly started talking. And he looked at me and he goes, Nick, it's weird because of Facebook. Like, I feel like me and you have been friends forever, but we've never met.
Yeah.
And he said this about a lot of people he's met. And I feel the same way. Like,
Yeah.
I've used the power of social media to meet people that would never come into my world.
Right.
So also using that to share things about my life that I probably wouldn't just stand outside and scream out into the world has allowed me to feel comfortable talking across the table to somebody I never met because I do it every single day. I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking to hundreds of people right now that I've probably never met. And some of those people will reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook and talk to me about things we talk about on the show. And I've never met them, but it gives them a reason to talk to me.
Yep.
And so that's when I was scared to be on video. Like, I remember the first time I was ever on a podcast, I can't remember what it was called, but it was one locally here. And I was deathly afraid to go on it. And because I didn't like speaking, I didn't like listening to myself on the recording. I was scared to be recorded. And after I did that once, I was like, it wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it. And now look where I am now. Like, every single week for an hour, I get on here and talk to people I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, off of that note, that holster you made for Sean was really cool. That turned out awesome.
Yeah, it turned out pretty good. I was happy with it. So there's a bunch more coming. I'm going to Salt Lake in 2 weeks for an event with him, and we're gonna figure something out. So I had a lot of people ask for those clips. So I actually had been turning people down saying I couldn't do it, and he messaged me because he saw that apparently all of you guys listening tagged him in enough of those photos that he said that anybody who is interested, I could make a few more if people wanted them.
The Lions Not Sheep clip.
Yeah, the clip that said Lions Not Sheep on it.
That's awesome.
Again, as much as I love that brand, it has now become something synonymous with people who are anti-establishment type people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even I use that. Like, I see people here in Boise wearing a Lions Not Sheep hat, and I immediately make sure to talk to them because I know Sean and I know the movement that he's creating, and that gives me an opportunity to interact with him. And it's funny because I'll get a few people, like, I've bought drinks at the bar for a couple of guys wearing their hats.
Yep.
And he's like, my wife bought me this. I didn't even know
really
about that. And I'm like, well, it's nice to meet you. Here's what we do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you should follow Lions Not Sheep on Instagram. Like, here you go. And it just gives you that, like, reason to engage.
Yep.
And that's another thing that I learned when I met Ryan through Instagram.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they opened this new Albertsons here in Meridian, and it's like this huge marketplace or whatever. I was there, and he was there with his wife, and I was there with my girlfriend at the time, and we were both going through the, like, where you buy food or whatnot. And he's standing next to me, and we're both looking at each other like, I think I know this guy.
Yeah.
But I'm like, who the hell's this big ass tattooed dude staring me down? I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, honey, we gotta go. And we go sit down, and I instantly get an Instagram DM. Hey, are you at Albertsons? And I'm like, okay, that's creepy.
Yeah.
And then we started and like that literally kicked off our friendship, was right there, because I didn't know who he was.
Yep.
But I had seen him on Instagram. I didn't even follow him. Like, he followed me on Instagram.
Yep.
And so I was like, he goes, yeah, I just moved here, blah, blah. As soon as I'm done on tour,
Yep.
We're going to do this. And then that kicked off our friend. He actually lives across the street from me.
Dude, that's awesome.
Ironically enough. So like that, like, knowing and interacting with people and the power of social media, like it, and where I was going with that is, like, if you have something like a Lions Not Sheep hat, a grunt style shirt, like it sets you apart, but it makes people like me want to approach you. And because of something that Ryan taught me, like, I purposefully engage with people I don't know.
Yep.
Just to practice. Just like you said about, like, improvised weapons. Like, if I see somebody wearing a Lions Not Sheep hat, I've told myself I'm going to interact with them. One, because they might be the type of people I want to be friends with and do business with. Two, it helps me not feel like shy to engage with someone I don't know.
Yeah.
And I instantly have a talking point.
Yep.
That makes me think of something. You know, we talk about if we're carrying a gun or whatever, we need to be way more responsible, right? We need to be upstanding citizens. Maybe for those of us that wear grunt style shirts or Lions Not Sheep clothing or whatever, maybe we need to take a cue from you, Nick, and be the good steward of the Second Amendment that we try to talk about on the show, and go out of our way to communicate people and share our positive views about self-defense and carrying a gun or whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of that target indicator, be an example.
Well, and with that said, like I talked about this a couple weeks ago with you, it's that I have all but given up trying to convert people who are anti-Second Amendment. But when you see somebody that's supporting what you already support, even if it's in a way that, like the gentleman I talked about that I bought the drink, he ordered a drink and I saw his hat and he didn't get what he, like the bartender didn't know what he wanted and he got something he didn't want, right? So I knew exactly what he was talking, because I was listening, because I was paying attention to what was going on. I was waiting for someone to show up that I had a meeting with. After my meeting, the guy was still there. And I grabbed the drink that he intended on wanting. And I said, hey man, I saw you had a Lions Not Sheep hat on. Do you know Sean? Like, do you know the brand? He's like, I have no idea, man. My wife bought me this hat and this shirt. Yeah. Like, oh, that's awesome. Like, here's the guy that started it. This is kind of like what it stands for. Like, I'm happy to see you wearing it. Like, here's a drink. I wanted to just tell you thanks for kind of supporting the brand, because he's my friend.
Yep.
And started a whole I sat down, I talked to him for like 40 minutes.
That's awesome.
And shared what I did, gave him my website. Like, I don't know if he's ordered anything from me, but like I got to build that connection and actually share someone else's brand that I support and know the story behind and help them understand like what they were supporting. So it's cool in that way. But if you're doing that, like if I'm wearing a grunt style t-shirt and I see someone else, you already have something in common.
Yeah.
We both have something that we can talk about.
Yeah.
So now either we're on the same page or we're not, but I can talk to you and I can figure that out. And like I said before, I can know who my allies are, where I'm at.
That's cool from both standpoints, from what you both have said. But I think there's so much divide nowadays in the country with everything going on as far as, for this or for that. And I think a lot of people forget that no matter our political views, religious views, whatever it is, that a lot of us are a lot more similar than we think. Mm-hmm. And we shut down dialogue because we're not willing to engage with other people and talk with them. And I think you guys are spot on with this as far as go talk to people, let them know that you're a good person. I think with all the craziness, the riots and everything else we faced this year, there's a lot of new gun owners. I can't remember how many this year. Was there 5 million, 7 million?
There was 8 million last year. And I think this year we're already like another 2 or 3 million. Like, yeah. That's crazy.
So people are starting to realize that they are their first line of defense. And there's a lot of new people in the community that are getting guns that maybe never would have had them before. But having people that are courteous and kind and willing to talk and say, hey, we're here to help you out if you need anything. It just opens up a lot of doors for more freedoms for us down the road, hopefully. That, maybe the guy that you talk to has been kind of anti-gun his whole life and has a moment where they think, okay, there is some value in this, and maybe I won't support 100%, but maybe he's the change that we need to. Just that one person might be the things we need to make things better.
Yeah, we talk about community, right? I mean, there's a monetary benefit sometimes when you communicate with people, but there's also the community benefit. Then they realize, oh, I'm really not alone.
And it also, like you said, good steward of the Second Amendment, right? So even if that person is anti-gun, anti-whatever, I don't have a problem with that person unless they personally attack me. Mm-hmm. And most likely they're not going to. If they don't like what you have to say, they're either going to walk away or they're going to wait till you leave. Because I will say this: most people who are not right-leaning, they're not the first person to engage in an altercation with you outside of when we saw these people who are heavy into these protests. I've never seen people like go out of their way to be rude to people as much as I have when it comes to the protesters. But
yeah,
normally most people are good-hearted. Most people don't want to be rude. A lot of them don't go out of their way to be kind, but they don't go out of their way either to be rude. Yeah. And so if you're engaging with people and you're just being Team America, which is really what I am, like,
yep.
I could care less what your views are until like they impact me directly. And obviously you gotta like watch out for that ahead of time. But if I can be friends with anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, but I could be friends with just about anybody for a certain amount of time. I have friends that I hang out with that are anti-gun. They don't like what I do.
Right.
But I mean, we still hang out and go do stuff because we get along.
Yeah.
We just don't talk about politics. We don't talk about work.
Yep.
Like, just sometimes knowing like the group of people that you're around, and so I think some of us can get a little bit up on our soapbox too much and a little bit too preachy. But I'm just as guilty. People who follow me on Facebook think that I'm the most political person ever. Really, I'm not. I'm just outspoken on Facebook, and I don't use social media for anything other than like to voice my opinions.
Yeah.
So, but with that said, I got to go coach a baseball game. So,
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we want to go over while we have Adam locked down?
I don't think so. I think I think it was a good episode. Hopefully the listeners enjoyed our conversation.
So, for anybody listening, Adam, just really quick, what do you have coming up that you want to pitch out there? And also, how can people follow you on the internet and get in touch with you?
So probably the best way to get a hold of me, I have a website. It's spartanmode.com, www.spartanmode.com. On Instagram, I'm spartan.mode. Facebook, just Adam Boyce or Spartan Mode LLC. I'm gonna be kind of weighing things here as far as what I'm gonna post out there as far as seminars and stuff for a little bit, just kind of seeing how things are gonna go the next couple weeks. But the best way to know what's gonna happen is to follow me there on Instagram or Facebook, or if you go to my website, spartanmode.com, at the bottom of it, we'll give you an opportunity to sign up for the email list, and we can push stuff out that way. Definitely
get on his email list, guys. I'm not on it, but I'm going to get on it now because I didn't know that that was a thing. So I always encourage people, especially in our community, get on to the email lists of the people that you want to support and that you like hearing from, because you never know when our social media might disappear. I've seen it happen multiple times.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even those of us that have thousands of followers on social media, if that goes away and you're not on our email list, you may never hear from us again.
Yeah.
Yep.
So get on the email list. Soon, Range Minded will have its own email list. I'm working on that right now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What about you?
What about me?
What about you, Steve? What do you got going on?
Well, hopefully we'll get some firearms classes rolling again, get some different stuff happening. You can keep on track with that in Impractical Tactical. That's what I'm on Facebook, Impractical Tactical, or you can find me in Practical_Tactical, I think, on Instagram. I can't remember. I need to get better.
Or you guys can just message him at the Range Minded Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Also, podcast@iishooting.com is his email. So if there's anybody that you'd like to see on the show, that you'd like us to reach out to, or that you know and want to have on our show, make sure to email us and let us know, and Steve will reach out and set that up.
Yeah, and we got a good guest coming up. I just got a notification while we were doing the show for our next guest, so I'm excited to have him on.
Oh, do we get a hint?
Well, it's somebody that makes sharp objects.
Oh, awesome. I know exactly who he's talking about, and you guys are going to want to stay tuned.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I'm kind of jealous. I have one of his patches. I don't own one of his knives, if it's the guy I'm thinking. And yeah.
Oh, Adam already knew before me?
I saw it post up right here on the screen. I saw it come across. Observation, man.
Yes, that gentleman posted a couple of videos recently that caught my attention, and the last one I knew Steve would connect with. I said,
"What did I say after I watched it? What did I message you?"
Something about did you say you fell in love?
Yeah, I said
something like that.
In love with this guy.
So yeah, I think you guys are going to stay tuned for that. I'll post about it on social media this week. So like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to get a hold of me directly, I'm on Instagram at HoffTech Industries, at HoffTech Industries on Facebook, or just Nick Hoffer on Facebook and Instagram. So we will talk to you guys later.
If you haven't checked out Nick's holsters, check them out. I had a bunch made for me. He made a bunch for me. I ordered some from him. Red holsters for our certs. We use them for training all the time. Great holster. So check them out.
And actually, because of those, I've sold so many of those red ones, I'm about to make a link on the website specifically for the cert guns.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, they're cool. That's it. Identifies quickly that this is my training setup, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have those ones sitting here to ship to you. I invoiced you, but I didn't ship them.
Okay. I'll check out my email and get you some money. Thanks, man.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. I'm going to jump off here and go coach baseball, so have fun.
Hey, have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Yep. See ya. Thank you.